Silence your notifications for a moment and listen to this carefully. We have never been more connected than we are right now. Messages arrive instantly. Faces appear on screens from across the world. Every thought can be shared, liked, replied to, and validated within seconds. And yet, beneath this constant hum of interaction, something unsettling is growing. A quiet, persistent loneliness that doesn't disappear no matter how many people we connect with. Here is the uncomfortable question most people avoid asking. What if the very tools designed to bring us closer are slowly teaching us how to be alone together? We scroll through lives that look full, vibrant, and socially rich, while sitting in rooms that feel strangely empty. We exchange words all day, yet struggle to feel truly understood. We are surrounded by voices, but starved of presence. And the more this pattern repeats, the more isolation becomes normalized, hidden behind activity, masked by engagement, disguised as connection. This isn't a failure of technology. It's a psychological consequence of how the human mind interprets interaction. Our brains evolved for depth, for tone, for pauses, for shared physical space. Digital connection offers speed without substance, volume without intimacy, and visibility without being known. Over time, the mind adapts. It learns to stay stimulated while remaining emotionally distant. It learns to perform connection rather than experience it. Most people don't notice this shift happening. They just feel more tired, more detached, less patient, less fulfilled by conversations that once felt meaningful. They blame themselves. They assume something is wrong with their personality, their motivation, or their social skills. But what's really happening is far more subtle and far more widespread. We are living inside a paradox. The more reachable we become, the less reachable we feel. The more visible we are, the less seen we feel. The more connected our devices are, the more disconnected our inner lives become. This video is not about quitting technology or demonizing the digital world. That would be too simple and dishonest. This is about understanding the psychological trade-offs we rarely talk about. The hidden costs of constant interaction. The way curated identities replace authentic presence. The way algorithms quietly narrow our emotional world. And the way all of this reshapes how we relate to others and to ourselves. If you've ever felt lonely while surrounded by people online, if you've ever closed an app and felt strangely empty afterward, if you've ever wondered why connection feels easier but meaning feels harder, then this video is for you. Before we go deeper, take a moment to pause the endless scroll. Subscribe to Quiet Power if you value clarity over noise and depth over distraction. This channel isn't about reacting faster or speaking louder. It's about seeing more clearly in a world designed to keep you distracted. Watch this video in one sitting if you can. Not because it's entertaining, but because the ideas need time to settle. By the end, you won't just understand why modern connection feels hollow. You'll begin to recognize where genuine connection has been quietly slipping away and how to reclaim it. Let's begin with the paradox itself. At no point in human history have people interacted this frequently. From the moment we wake up, our minds are pulled into streams of messages, notifications, updates, and digital signals that demand acknowledgement. Before our feet touch the floor, we have already connected with dozens of people, coworkers, friends, strangers, content creators, and distant acquaintances. The volume is staggering, and yet something feels fundamentally off. Connection used to be rare. It required effort, presence, and intention. You had to travel, wait, or plan. Conversations unfolded slowly, shaped by pauses, expressions, and shared environments. Today, connection is instant and abundant. It costs almost nothing. And because it costs nothing, it is treated as if it means nothing. This is where the paradox begins. The human brain does not measure connection by quantity. It measures it by depth. It looks for signals of safety, attention, and mutual presence. Eye contact, tone, timing, silence. These are not optional details. They are the language of real bonding. Digital interaction strips most of this away. What remains is information without embodiment, words without weight, presence without proximity. At first, this feels efficient. You can stay in touch with everyone. You can respond quickly. You can maintain a wide network. But over time, the brain begins to register something important is missing. There is stimulation, but no nourishment. Interaction, but no anchoring. And slowly, a sense of emotional hunger develops, one that scrolling cannot satisfy. The illusion of constant connection creates a false sense of social security. Because you are always reachable, you assume you are not alone. Because people can message you, like your content, or react to your presence, you feel socially validated. But validation is not the same as being known. And being known is what the nervous system actually craves. This is why people can spend hours interacting online and still feel lonely afterward. The activity convinces the mind that connection occurred, but the body feels otherwise. There was no shared space, no sustained attention, no mutual vulnerability. The brain registers effort, but the emotional system registers absence. Another layer of the paradox is speed. Digital connection moves too fast for meaning to form. Conversations are fragmented, interrupted, and multitasked. You reply while distracted. You listen while thinking about your response. You skim instead of absorbing. Over time, this trains the mind to associate interaction with surface-level engagement rather than depth. When connection becomes rapid and constant, it loses its ability to signal importance. Every message feels equally urgent. Every interaction feels replaceable. This flattens emotional significance. Relationships no longer feel distinct. They blur together into a stream of low-intensity contact. And when everything feels the same, nothing feels meaningful. The irony is that constant connection reduces tolerance for real connection. Face-to-face conversations require patience, presence, and emotional exposure. They unfold slowly. They contain awkward pauses and moments of uncertainty. A mind conditioned to instant digital interaction often finds this uncomfortable. It reaches for the phone. It seeks escape. It avoids depth not because it doesn't want it, but because it has forgotten how to stay with it. This is why many people feel more anxious in real social settings, despite being social online. The skills are different. Digital interaction rewards speed, wit, and performance. Real connection rewards listening, vulnerability, and restraint. One trains the ego, the other trains the nervous system. The paradox deepens when we consider how digital connection fills time without filling meaning. Moments that were once quiet waiting, walking, sitting alone, are now occupied. Silence has been eliminated, and silence is where reflection happens. It's where emotions surface. It's where the mind integrates experience. Without silence, the inner world becomes neglected. When the inner world is neglected, people seek more external input to compensate. More messages, more content, more interaction. This creates a feedback loop where connection is used to avoid loneliness, but ends up reinforcing it. The more you seek relief through stimulation, the less capable you become of sitting with yourself or others without distraction. There is also a subtle shift in how people perceive availability. Because connection is always possible, absence feels like rejection. A delayed reply becomes personal. Silence becomes threatening. Expectations increase. Pressure builds. And relationships begin to feel demanding rather than supportive. This adds emotional friction that further erodes intimacy. In the past, distance created longing. Today, constant access creates fatigue. When everyone is always present, no one feels truly present. The mind is split across conversations, platforms, and identities. Attention becomes fragmented, and intimacy, which requires sustained focus, becomes difficult to maintain. This paradox explains why people often feel closer to others during shared hardship, or uninterrupted time than during daily digital contact. Depth emerges not from frequency, but from shared presence and emotional risk. Digital connection minimizes risk. You can disengage instantly. You can curate your response. You can disappear without explanation. This safety comes at a cost, the loss of emotional investment. When connection carries no cost, it carries little weight. And when it carries little weight, it struggles to anchor identity. People begin to feel interchangeable. Relationships feel provisional. This uncertainty feeds a background sense of isolation, even when interaction is constant. The mind begins to adapt to this environment. It lowers expectations. It avoids vulnerability. It keeps interactions light and efficient. This adaptation protects against disappointment, but it also blocks intimacy. Over time, people stop expecting to be deeply understood. They settle for being acknowledged. This is the quiet tragedy of constant connection. It promises closeness, but delivers familiarity without depth. It offers interaction, but withholds intimacy. And because it is so normalized, many people don't realize what they are missing. They just feel something slipping away. Understanding this paradox is the first step, not to reject connection, but to see it clearly. To recognize that more interaction does not automatically mean more closeness, and that the path back to genuine connection begins not with more noise, but with intentional depth. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this environment pressures people to perform instead of relate, and how curated identities slowly replace authentic selves, further widening the gap between connection and intimacy. Modern connection does not ask who you are. It asks how you appear. This subtle shift has reshaped the way people relate to one another, often without realizing it. In digital spaces, identity becomes something to manage, adjust, and present rather than something to live. And when connection is built on performance, intimacy quietly disappears. At first, curation feels harmless. You choose flattering photos. You share achievements instead of struggles. You present moments that feel meaningful, interesting, or admirable. This is not deception in the traditional sense. It is selection. But over time, selection turns into construction. You begin shaping a version of yourself that is easier to like, easier to consume, and safer to show. The problem is not that this version is false. The problem is that it is incomplete. And incompleteness cannot sustain connection. The human nervous system bonds through vulnerability. Not constant exposure, but selective honesty. When someone shares uncertainty, fear, or contradiction, it signals trust. It says, "I'm not managing your perception of me." Curated selves do the opposite. They signal control. They communicate that what you are seeing is filtered, edited, and safe. The brain registers this and responds with distance. This is why people can follow someone for years and still feel disconnected from them. They know the highlights, not the human. They see consistency, not complexity. And complexity is where intimacy lives. The performance trap deepens because it is rewarded. Likes, comments, shares, and attention reinforce the behavior. The brain learns quickly. Polished moments receive validation, raw moments receive silence or worse, judgment. Over time, this conditions people to hide the parts of themselves that don't perform well. What begins online spills into real life. People carry the same guardedness into conversations. They keep things light. They avoid discomfort. They share opinions they know will be accepted rather than thoughts they're still forming. Relationships become exchanges of agreeable surfaces rather than spaces for truth. This creates a quiet loneliness that is difficult to name. You are seen, but not known. Acknowledged, but not understood. Surrounded, but not supported. Performance also fractures self-perception. When you spend time maintaining a public version of yourself, you begin to relate to your own life as content. Moments are evaluated for how they look, not how they feel. Experiences are interrupted by the urge to document. Reflection is replaced by reaction. This separation weakens self-trust. You begin to feel detached from your own emotions because you are constantly translating them into something presentable. Over time, it becomes harder to identify what you genuinely feel versus what you believe you should feel. The pressure to perform also creates comparison. When everyone presents their best moments, the mind assumes those moments are the norm. Struggles feel personal instead of universal. Doubt feels like failure instead of part of growth. People begin to believe they are falling behind, not realizing they are comparing their inner world to someone else's edited exterior. This comparison fuels isolation. It discourages openness. It makes vulnerability feel risky. Why reveal confusion when others seem so certain? Why admit loneliness when everyone else appears fulfilled? The result is a collective silence where everyone struggles privately while performing confidence publicly. Another consequence of curated selves is emotional shallowness. When interaction is built around performance, conversations avoid depth. There is little room for uncertainty, contradiction, or growth. Opinions harden. People present finished thoughts instead of exploring ideas together. Dialogue becomes monologue. True connection requires unfinishedness. It requires the ability to say, "I don't know, I'm struggling," or "I'm still figuring this out." Performance culture discourages this. It rewards certainty and confidence, even when they are artificial. The performance trap also trains people to seek external validation rather than internal alignment. Self-worth becomes dependent on response. Silence feels like rejection. Attention feels like proof of value. This creates anxiety because validation is unpredictable. Algorithms change. Attention shifts. And when it does, people are left questioning their worth rather than the system. This instability affects relationships deeply. When self-worth is externally anchored, interactions carry hidden expectations. You seek reassurance without asking for it. You interpret others' responses through the lens of approval. Small changes in attention feel amplified. Connection becomes fragile. Over time, this erodes trust. Not because people are unkind, but because performance prevents honesty. When everyone is managing perception, no one feels safe enough to be real. And without reality, intimacy cannot form. The most damaging part of the performance trap is how invisible it is. People don't consciously choose to perform. They adapt. They respond to incentives. They mirror what is rewarded. And because the behavior is normalized, the loneliness it creates is often misattributed. People blame themselves. They assume they are socially inadequate, emotionally distant, or incapable of deep connection. In truth, many are simply exhausted from pretending. Breaking out of the performance trap does not require disappearing or rejecting modern platforms. It requires awareness. Awareness that every curated identity creates distance. Awareness that real connection begins where performance ends. When someone speaks without polishing their thoughts, something shifts. When they share uncertainty without apologizing for it, the nervous system relaxes. When they allow silence instead of filling it, trust forms. These moments feel different because they are different. They signal presence, not presentation. The courage to drop performance is rare because it risks rejection. But it is also the only path to being known. And being known, even by a few, is more stabilizing than being admired by many. As long as connection is treated as something to manage, it will remain shallow. As long as identity is curated for acceptance, intimacy will feel out of reach. The paradox is that the very strategies used to feel connected are often the ones creating the distance. In the next chapter, we will explore how algorithms and digital structures amplify this problem, isolating people further by shaping what they see, think, and feel while quietly convincing them they are more connected than ever. The modern digital world feels expansive. Endless content, infinite perspectives, constant access to information. But beneath this appearance of openness lies a narrowing force that most people never consciously notice. Algorithms do not show you the world as it is. They show you a version of the world designed to keep you engaged. And engagement is not the same as understanding. At first, algorithms feel helpful. They learn what you like, what you watch, what you react to. They remove friction. They save time. But slowly, almost invisibly, they begin to shape perception. They reduce exposure to what challenges you and increase exposure to what confirms you. Over time, this creates an echo chamber, not because you asked for one, but because it is efficient. The brain loves efficiency. It prefers familiarity. It avoids cognitive strain. Algorithms exploit this preference by feeding the mind content that aligns with existing beliefs, emotional patterns, and identity signals. This feels comfortable. It feels validating. And it feels like clarity. But it is not clarity. It is reinforcement. When people are repeatedly exposed to the same viewpoints, their beliefs harden. Nuance disappears. Complexity feels unnecessary. The world begins to divide into simple categories: right and wrong, us and them, safe and threatening. This simplification reduces mental effort, but it also reduces empathy. Empathy requires exposure. It requires hearing perspectives that feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, or challenging. Echo chambers remove this friction. They create the illusion of consensus. When everyone in your feed agrees with you, it feels like truth. Dissent feels abnormal. Opposition feels hostile. This is where isolation deepens. Not physical isolation, but psychological isolation. You are surrounded by people, opinions, and voices, yet increasingly disconnected from those who think differently. Conversations become harder. Disagreement feels personal. Dialogue turns into defense. The tragedy is that algorithms do not isolate individuals from content. They isolate individuals from each other. They fragment shared reality. Two people can live in the same city, experience the same events, and yet inhabit completely different informational worlds. This makes mutual understanding difficult. Without shared reference points, connection weakens. This fragmentation affects identity. People begin to define themselves in opposition to others, rather than in relation to shared values. Belonging becomes tribal. Loyalty replaces curiosity. And curiosity, which is essential for connection, slowly fades. The emotional impact of this is subtle but powerful. Constant exposure to reinforcing content creates a heightened emotional baseline. Outrage, fear, and validation are emotionally stimulating, so algorithms prioritize them. Over time, the nervous system adapts to this stimulation. Calm feels dull. Nuance feels unsatisfying. Silence feels uncomfortable. This state keeps people reactive. They respond quickly, emotionally, and defensively. Reflection slows. Listening decreases. And real connection built on patience and presence becomes harder to access. Echo chambers also distort self-perception. When your views are constantly validated, self-doubt disappears, not because you are correct, but because you are unchallenged. This creates a fragile confidence. The moment it is questioned, the response is often aggression or withdrawal rather than dialogue. This fragility damages relationships. People avoid discussing meaningful topics to prevent conflict. They stick to safe subjects. They keep conversations shallow. Or they engage only with those who already agree. Both paths reduce intimacy. Algorithmic isolation also reinforces the performance trap. Content that performs well is content that provokes strong emotion or reinforces identity. This pressures individuals to express certainty rather than curiosity, outrage rather than understanding. Subtlety gets ignored. Extremes get rewarded. Over time, people begin to perform their beliefs rather than explore them. Opinions become part of identity. Changing one's mind feels like betrayal. Growth feels risky. This rigidity further isolates individuals from meaningful connection. The most dangerous aspect of algorithmic isolation is its invisibility. People believe they are informed, connected, and aware. They don't see the boundaries of their exposure. They don't realize what they are not seeing. And because the system feels personalized, it feels truthful. This illusion of understanding replaces actual understanding. People know many facts, but few contexts. Many opinions, but little empathy. Many voices, but little listening. Real connection requires shared reality. It requires the ability to say, "I see how you got there," even when you disagree. Echo chambers remove the pathways that make this possible. They train the mind to categorize rather than relate. This isolation does not always feel lonely. Often, it feels righteous. It feels like belonging. But it is a shallow belonging, built on agreement rather than understanding. And when agreement is threatened, connection collapses. Breaking free from algorithmic isolation does not mean rejecting technology. It means reclaiming agency. It means intentionally seeking perspectives that challenge you. It means slowing down emotional reactions. It means valuing understanding over validation. When people step outside their echo chambers, something surprising happens. Discomfort arises, but so does depth. Conversations become richer. Assumptions soften. Empathy expands. The world becomes more complex, but also more human. The cost of remaining in an echo chamber is not just misunderstanding others. It is losing the ability to relate. It is losing curiosity. It is losing the capacity for genuine dialogue. As long as algorithms dictate exposure, connection will remain conditional. As long as engagement is prioritized over understanding, isolation will deepen. In the final chapter, we will explore how to move beyond digital proxies and reclaim real intimacy by intentionally reshaping habits, environments, and expectations, so connection becomes something lived, not performed or reinforced by machines. Reclaiming true connection does not begin with abandoning technology or isolating yourself from the modern world. It begins with a shift in awareness, a quiet recognition that something essential has been diluted, and that no amount of interaction will replace what was lost. Connection is not missing because people stopped caring. It is missing because the conditions that allow it to grow have quietly disappeared. True connection requires presence, not partial presence, not distracted attention, full presence. And presence is now rare. Most interactions today happen while attention is divided. Conversations compete with notifications. Silence is filled reflexively. Listening becomes secondary to responding. When presence is fractured, connection becomes fragile. People feel this instinctively. They sense when they are not fully received, even if words are exchanged. The nervous system knows the difference. Reclaiming connection starts with reclaiming attention. Attention is the most honest signal of care. When you give someone your full attention, you communicate safety without saying a word. This does not require grand gestures. It requires restraint, putting the phone away, allowing silence, letting conversations unfold without steering them toward performance or resolution. Silence plays a critical role here. Silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space allows emotion to surface. It allows meaning to form. In silence, people feel permission to be more than their roles. They feel less rushed to perform. This is where authenticity begins to re-emerge. Many people avoid silence because it feels uncomfortable. But that discomfort is often the doorway to depth. It reveals what has been buried under noise. When you stay with that discomfort, rather than escaping it, you create conditions for genuine connection to appear. Another essential shift is moving from quantity to quality. Modern culture celebrates reach, networks, and visibility, but the nervous system does not register numbers. It registers safety. One relationship where you are fully known can stabilize you more than 100 shallow interactions. Reclaiming connection means choosing depth deliberately. It means investing in fewer relationships and allowing them to develop slowly. It means prioritizing consistency over novelty. Trust is not built through intensity. It is built through repetition and reliability. This requires patience. Depth cannot be rushed. It cannot be optimized. It grows through shared experiences, honest conversations, and mutual vulnerability over time. Many people abandon relationships before they deepen, not because something is wrong, but because depth feels uncertain and inefficient. Another key aspect is reclaiming the body. Digital connection lives in the mind. Real connection lives in the body. Eye contact, tone of voice, posture, and proximity carry emotional information that words alone cannot. When connection remains digital, these signals are lost. Reintroducing physical presence, when possible, restores emotional clarity. Even simple shared activities create bonding. Walking together, sitting quietly, eating a meal. These moments may seem ordinary, but they anchor connection in reality rather than representation. Reclaiming connection also requires honesty with yourself. Many people use digital interaction to avoid their own inner world. Noise becomes a shield. Distraction becomes protection. But connection with others is limited by connection with self. Spending time alone without stimulation strengthens self-awareness. It allows you to notice patterns, fears, and unmet needs. This clarity makes connection easier, not harder. When you know yourself, you relate from authenticity rather than performance. Another shift involves redefining vulnerability. Vulnerability is not oversharing or emotional exposure without boundaries. It is selective honesty. It is choosing to reveal what is true when it matters. It is speaking from experience rather than image. When vulnerability is grounded, it invites connection rather than demanding it. It signals trust without pressure. This creates safety, which is the foundation of intimacy. Reclaiming connection also means accepting friction. Real relationships involve misunderstanding, disagreement, and discomfort. Digital environments train people to avoid these moments by muting, blocking, or disengaging. But friction, when handled with respect, deepens trust. Staying present during disagreement builds resilience. It teaches the nervous system that connection can survive tension. This is critical. Without this skill, relationships remain shallow and conditional. Environment matters more than intention. If your surroundings constantly pull your attention away, connection will struggle. Reclaiming connection often requires small environmental changes, designating tech-free spaces, creating routines that protect presence, removing unnecessary noise. These changes are not restrictive. They are supportive. They create space for what matters to emerge naturally. Perhaps the most important element is consistency. Connection is not restored through dramatic moments, but through quiet reliability. Showing up, listening, remembering, following through. These actions build trust over time. Trust is not built through words. It is built through patterns. When people feel safe with you consistently, they relax. And when they relax, connection deepens. Reclaiming true connection also requires letting go of the need to be impressive. Connection is not earned through excellence. It is created through authenticity. When performance drops, presence rises. This shift may feel vulnerable at first. It may feel like you are risking invisibility. But what you gain is far more stable. You gain being known rather than admired. And being known sustains the nervous system in a way admiration never can. As you make these shifts, something subtle happens. Interactions feel slower, but richer. Conversations feel less urgent, but more meaningful. Loneliness softens, not because you are surrounded by people, but because you feel genuinely accompanied. This is not a return to the past. It is an adaptation. A conscious choice to use modern tools without letting them define how you relate. Technology can support connection when it serves presence rather than replacing it. Reclaiming true connection is not a single decision. It is a practice. One that requires awareness, patience, and courage. Courage to be present. Courage to be seen. Courage to stay when it would be easier to scroll away. If you have listened this far, you already sense what matters. You don't need to change everything at once. Begin small. One conversation. One moment of presence. One choice to listen without distraction. Connection grows quietly. And when it does, it changes not just how you relate to others, but how you experience yourself. If you're still here, you don't need more information. You already felt what this video was pointing toward. Connection doesn't return through effort. It returns through presence. So don't rush to share this. Don't immediately open another app. Don't fill the silence. Sit with what you noticed. Notice who you've been distant from. Notice where you've been present in body, but absent in mind. Then make one quiet decision, not to consume more, but to connect more honestly. If you want reminders like this, not to motivate you, but to steady you, you can subscribe. Not for noise, for clarity. Now close this video, put the phone down, and give your full attention to one real moment. Fade to silence.